Well, everyone, welcome to the 19th DEM I Wonder webinar. DEM has so many services, offerings, programs, and hidden gems that we want to share with all of you. So we're excited to take just a few minutes each week to highlight these features in our weekly webinar. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many exercises have been postponed or canceled. The Utah Division of Emergency Management is hosting this weekly webinar series aimed at providing local emergency managers with relevant content and opportunities to enhance their capabilities. Webinars are live for Q&A and are recorded for later viewing on the DEM website and YouTube channel. Most of these webinars are seminars or workshops with a hands-on portion which will allow emergency managers to become oriented to a DEM process or test a DEM product. We recently sent out a survey that will be open until May 15th. If you have not had a chance to complete that survey about the I Wonder webinars, I will be placing the link in the chat as well as on our YouTube description. We would appreciate your feedback about this webinar. Our schedule today will be as follows. We'll start with our ground rules and etiquette. Next, we'll have a brief presentation by Wade Mathews on I Wonder How a PIO Writes News Releases. Following the presentation, there will be a hands-on portion where participants will be encouraged to test out the product or process that was presented. Following the hands-on portion of our program, the presenter will be available for a Q&A session. And following the Q&A, we'll close with a short message about upcoming webinars. The ground rules today are fairly simple. Please mute your line while the presenter is presenting. If you have a question, you may type it in the group chat or unmute at the appropriate time to ask your question. This session is being recorded and will be available on our website for future viewing. Thank you all for your attendance today. And with that, we'll turn the time over to Wade Mathews.
Thank you, Tracy. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be able to talk about this. Appreciate this. I think this was a specific request for this training. And I think we'll, depending on how this goes, possibly provide a couple more of these as well for public information officers, specific information, specific training. So I kind of wanted to just begin a little bit here by doing a little poll assessment, and whether you want to put a reply in the chat window, or maybe turn your camera on. I'm curious, how many of you have a public information officer or some other type of communication person within your office? So all right, I'm seeing a couple hands there. Okay, 3. There's a chat message there. 4. Okay, so yes. See Ken's hand up. I'm not sure who he's referring to, but yeah, I think they have one in his office. Chris has one. Justin has one. Yeah, I'm just kidding, Ken. Right. Okay, so it sounds like a majority of you do have some, and there is training available for public information officers. Now I'm going to go ahead, Tracy, if you want to stop presenting, and I will present my slides. All right, so we're going to be talking about news releases and media monitoring today, and these are from the FEMA G290 Basic Public Information Officer course. It has various units, and I just chose that this is maybe one of the first units that would be helpful for people getting started in public information, or for emergency managers that maybe were wearing multiple hats and maybe we're doing some of the public information officer duties themselves. Writing a news release, I think, is one of the basic duties and skills that a public information officer would need to know. So as I mentioned, there are training opportunities for your public information officers, whether they are brand new or whether they've been in the business for a long time. There's all levels of training here, and these are all from the from FEMA. Independent Study 29 is a public information officer awareness course. It's just an online, individual, at your own pace training, just kind of about what is a public information officer, what do they do, how do they fit in, kind of a thing. And there's the link to that right there. So I'm not sure if you can copy and paste that, or I'll just put these into the chat window actually. The E, or maybe it's K or L, 105 Public Information Basics course is a brand new FEMA course that replaces G290 and G291. Now, like I said, the presentation that I'll be using is following the G290 course, Basic Public Information Officer. G291 is the Joint Information System, Joint Information Center course. And unfortunately, we have not been able to provide those courses since the pandemic, essentially, for obvious reasons. We're still kind of, as we know, in the midst of the pandemic, and numbers are fluctuating up and down around the state. And so we still have not been able to determine a path moving forward as far as when we would be able to offer those G290 and G291 courses again. But as I said, those courses have been replaced with the L105 Public Information Basics course, which is available now. On that link, Chris Repp, our DEM state training officer, has mentioned that those are available virtually. That course 105 is available virtually right now. We're also going to be trying to bring it to Utah in person sometime in the future, hopefully near future, maybe within the year, possibly. The 388 Advanced Public Information Officer, well, the 105, by the way, that's a 3-day course, and virtual or in person. The 388 Advanced Public Information Officer course is an in-person course. It's a week-long course at EMI. Go back to Emmitsburg, Maryland, and take that course there with other public information officers from around the country. And of course, each of these kind of builds on the rest. And I think, like for example, IS 29 is a prerequisite for 105, and so on and so on. And then finally, the Master Public Information Officer course is actually a 3-course program. There's 3 separate courses within the Master Public Information Officer course. I have not taken that one yet. I took the Advanced Public Information Officer course a long time ago, and I know it's actually been updated and revised since I took it, and I probably ought to try and get back to the Advanced Public Information Officer course myself. So I will post those in the chat window at the end of this presentation. So I don't have to take my slides.
Hey, Wade.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I posted them.
Oh, you posted them. Thank you very much, Jeff. Those are in the chat for you. If you want to click on those, you can get more information. You can sign up and register for those courses at those links. Thanks, Jeff. All right, so writing a news release, the cycle of emergency management communications. We have the before an event, so the blue skies outreach and campaign efforts, the day-to-day type stuff. Then we have an incident. Large or small, we could have an incident. Doesn't matter really what it is, and that's the during phase of the cycle. What does the emergency public information entail? Are we conducting media briefings and those types of things related to that incident? And then the after phase of the cycle is your analysis and modifications. You are doing your after action reports, revising plans, replacing equipment, recruiting new people, whatever that might look like. And throughout all of the cycle, you're doing media monitoring. What is the media saying about your organization, if it's before or after? What is it saying about the incident, if it's during? Is the information correct? Those types of things. You determine while you're doing the media monitoring. And that cycle is just kind of a continuous cycle. So in which of these phases would you want to write a news release? What do you think? I can't see anybody. So if anybody wants to just open a mic and just offer an answer, in which of these phases would you write a news release?
Any of them.
Right, sounded like Mark. Any of them, you could write a news release in any of these phases. Your blue skies news releases could be preparedness and awareness and just outreach and promotion of your organization and your good projects and works. A news release during an emergency could entail your EOCs activated and operational, protective action orders, such as evacuation or boil water orders, things like that, where shelters, where's your triage and treatment center, any of that kind of emergency public information could be put in a news release during. And then the after the fact, recovery is long term. It could involve recovery information in news releases. It could involve, again, after action findings and corrections and things like that. And then you would resort back to the before phase of the cycle, where you're doing news releases in blue sky days again. Okay, tools of the trade for a public information officer as far as disseminating information. These are tools just for disseminating information. How are we getting information out to the public, to our target audiences, our constituents, or internally even? This could be internal as well. And news releases right there at the top, that's what we're going to talk about today. It's not necessarily the most important. It's not necessarily the one you would use the most. It's just one of the tools in the toolbox that is important to know how to use, how to write, how to prepare, produce. And we're going to talk more about news releases. Statements. A statement is just basically a paragraph saying you're making a statement, an observation, an opinion. You're stating a fact. You're making an opinion. It could be an empathy statement involving an incident. It could be a congratulatory statement about somebody's promotion. It could be just a simple statement that does not need any other supporting information. Fact sheets, those are your day-to-day stuff that you would have prepared in advance of an incident, but relates to what you do day to day. A fact sheet, you could have a fact sheet on protective actions that you might be giving out. You could have a fact sheet on what are the warning systems people might hear your emergency information coming from in your communities. You could have a fact sheet on grants. Well, let's see, that's more internal. A fact sheet on just whatever information that the public might be seeking at any given time. You could have a fact sheet prepared on that with some descriptive information and bullet points and graphs or whatever fits on that particular topic. You can put that in a fact sheet. Media advisories are similar to a news release. They are meant specifically for the media's use, they stop there. The information in the media advisory stops at the media. The information in a news release goes out to the public. And at the top of that news release, you even can say for immediate release, which indicates they can turn around and send it to the public right now. Or it could say embargoed until, which means we're giving the media this heads up information, but don't give it to the public until after this date and time. A media advisory is particularly, we're going to have a news conference, we're doing a media briefing, or just something that the media would need to know. Doesn't need to go any further to the public. Key messages and talking points is a great tool that you use when you write these when you're expecting to do an interview. You're making an appearance in studio, on a TV station or on a radio station. And it's what are the key points you want to make, your key messages and the supporting points, the talking points. And you just list those out kind of like in a map, a story map, or just an outline basically of what are your three or four key messages, and then two or three talking points supporting those key messages. Web products, obviously, what are you putting on your website and other social media? Public service announcements basically is what we're, commercials on TV and radio, which we usually think are free, and unless you want them on 4 or 5 in the morning, middle of the night, you're probably gonna have to pay a little bit extra to get those out there when you want them, and prepare. You're gonna have to pay, to produce those, those videos or radio announcements or those types of things. Newsletter articles, brochures, flyers, and other handouts. You're familiar with those. So our basic concepts as far as communicating apply to all of those tools. But specifically with a news release, what are our objectives? Why are we communicating? What's the action we want to take, or the action we want our audience to take? That's kind of the objective there. And then who is the audience? Who needs this message? Who needs this information? where are we trying to get it to go to specifically. So, depending on your channels of dissemination, whether this is going to the media, to that audience, or going directly to that audience through your own channels, such as social media or in-person town halls or things like that. Who's your audience? How are you going to reach them? And then what's the message? Back to the 3 key messages and your talking points. What do you want to say? How are you going to say it? And also, it's important to know what you don't want to say. If there's a kind of a controversial kind of situation or an emergency situation where not all the information is releasable yet, you want to know what you don't want to say, what you can't say as well when you're preparing your messages. So when to use a news release, we already established, thanks Mark, that a news release is appropriate anytime during the communication cycle. But more importantly, what makes it newsworthy? What makes that incident, that activity, whatever that message is in your news release, what makes it newsworthy? What's going to make the media want to actually publish that or air it on their TV and radio stations? And it has to basically fall within one of these key areas. Is it timely? Is it happening soon? I'll point out right here, as far as when do you send out a news release? You want to give the media a couple days notice. If it's an event in blue sky days, a planned event, a scheduled calendared event, give them a couple days notice. They'll get it in their email. They'll get it in, that's how we send them out basically. Send them in an email. They will print it off. They'll put it in a folder. They'll file it. Maybe they'll just put it in an electronic folder these days. Maybe it's not paper anymore. Like in my time as an assignment editor at Fox 13. We print them out, stick them in a folder by date, and then we pull those out every morning and every afternoon. All the news agencies have story meetings, and they'll look at what's the news of the day, what's the priority, and where your news release falls within their priorities may depend on how newsworthy it is according to these characteristics. So, is it timely and important at this moment? Proximity, what is it talking about for this area, for our community, within our broadcast area, our circulation area? What's the proximity to the information included in the news release? Does it include conflict? There is a old saying in journalism, I guess, if it bleeds, it leads. And the news organizations will kind of say, no, that's not true. Where it is somewhat, they like conflict, they like controversy, that kind of stuff. And what's the impact? How important is this to the community? Is it going to have a major impact or little significance? Prominence, is it involving something important, somebody important, a major project? That's going to move it up the priority list of news items. How unique is it? And is it human interest? So newscasts, they like to just end on positive note, whether they've had conflict and negativity and controversy throughout the whole newscast, they'd like to end on something positive. So maybe it's a good human interest topic that you have in your news release. So you want to make sure that it's kind of falling within those categories and characteristics if possible. So other characteristics of a good news release, it's got to have the information. That's the whole point. If we're missing some information, some key critical information, then we didn't do our job when we sent that news release out. That's going to raise more questions. That's going to cause more phone calls, when maybe our news release was intended to reduce the phone calls coming in. Okay, so you got to make sure it's got everything in there that's releasable, approved and releasable to go out to the media and then to the public. So obviously, what it says, the who, what, why, when, where, how questions, you got to answer all of those. And is it accurate, factual information? It's not just opinion. We're just giving out factual, accurate information, and with attribution. Who's saying it? Is it somebody, an official, incident command, emergency manager, elected official, something like that? So you want to attribute, give credit to where this information is coming from. And in some cases, that would just involve your letterhead. This is coming out on official letterhead. It's in our official news release template. That can be attribution enough, possibly. But if it does involve key people, then you might want to make sure that that's included in the news release as well. And then how it says it, is it clear and concise and easy to understand? So throughout the coronavirus pandemic, working in the state JIC and working with all of our translated and interpreted materials, we're emphasizing plain language. Plain language. We're writing at a lower grade level, so to speak, elementary grade level versus college grade level. We're writing this so it's easy to understand. Everybody can understand it. A lot of populations that language, the English is second language and not very proficient in some cases. So that plain language can be important. Simple sentences, short paragraphs. And then you're writing in third person versus I said, you'll say the emergency manager says, or the mayor says, instead of I said this, or we say that. It's not we, it's they, the organization, the emergency manager. Okay. No jargon or acronyms. Of course, we'll spell out Division of Emergency Management and then follow that with DEM in parentheses, and then you are free to use that acronym and further references within the news release, as long as you explain what it is up at the top. But try to avoid terminology that people don't understand or know what that means. Again, sticking with plain language when you're writing it. How do we write this? So we call this the inverted pyramid, and this is how we write our news releases. It's also the same way journalists write their news stories. In the television and radio and newspaper, they use the inverted pyramid to write their stories. It's organized in a way that it flows logically from most important to least important. It's because maybe people are not getting, they don't have the time, it's flashing past them. We want to make sure that most important information is at the top. So if that's all they see, they're still going to get that most important information. It's going to be a strong lead, and then it answers the who, what, why, where, when, how questions. So that's why it's an inverted pyramid. That important information, there may be more of that at the top. As we work down the inverted pyramid, you'll add supporting facts to support that most information up at the top, and then less important facts and background information. I think I'm going to pause here and pull up I didn't do this within my slides themselves, but I'm going to pull up a news release here. Let's do this one here. So you should see here is a news conference scheduled news release template, which I can talk about a little bit more in a minute. This is an older one that I had from Twilla County days, but we do have one of these for DEM as well. I'm showing you a DEM news release template in just a minute as well. But inverted pyramid, most important information at the top. News conference scheduled. Okay, so that could probably be, and this is notice a media advisory versus a news release. So this is information that would stop with the media, and we can maybe make that headline or title a little bit stronger by having earthquake response news conference scheduled, or contaminated water news conference scheduled. We could say what that event was, what prompted the news conference. I'd put that in the title as well. Right here in the body, inverted pyramid, as a result of the emergency incident accident, which occurred at this time, this day, this time. We're scheduling a news conference at this time, at this location. It will involve these people. So the who, what, why, where, when, how. Directions to the JIC and designated media parking are attached. So inverted pyramid, the most important information, and then the supporting information, and then the least important information as you flow downward. Another example, let me see if I pull up this one here. So this one is a DEM news release. This one is a little bit, we use an automated email system for sending out our news releases, and this one was created in there. The previous one I just showed you from Twilla County Emergency Management was an older, just a paper Word document that I would send out as an attachment. But basically, it's on our letterhead. It's a news release for immediate release, and we would show, so this is going to the public, past the media. A major earthquake prompts the activation of the state EOC. So there's the, there's the catch, the hook, whatever, but we're talking about activating the EOC. Residents should be prepared to drop cover and hold on in a subtitle. We're emphasizing an important protective action as well. Again, who, what, why, where, when, how, most important information at the top. So emergency management is responding to this large earthquake that struck at this location at this time today. And as a result, the EOC is being staffed by our state emergency response team. It's now operational. Our personnel are communicating with local officials, gathering information, and coordinating resource needs. So notice again, that inverted pyramid flow. I'm trying to get the important message out that yes, we are activated and operational. We're on the job. And then this is what we're doing. And then, by the way, residents, here's what you need to know. Prepare for aftershocks, drop cover and hold on. Check for injuries, check for structural damage. Don't call 911. Again, these are the less important information at the bottom, but still good enough to include or important enough to include in the news release. Reminder, don't call 911 except for life-threatening. Don't shut your gas off unless you suspect a leak. Monitor warning systems for more information. Okay, so inverted pyramid right there. And we answered all the questions: who, what, why, where, when, how. And this is a template, meaning it's ready to go for the next earthquake. All I have to do is plug in the information that's missing in the parentheses, or it could be underlined, or just whatever indicates that this is information that needs to be added. This is also pre-approved. It's also gone through the approval process. So once this brief information that's missing is included, it's approved and included, this news release is ready to go. It can go out pretty quickly to the media. And we may come back to those, but those are a few examples right there. So inverted pyramid style. And again, what should it include? The format and the style is usually one page, single spaced, paragraph form with a space between paragraphs, easier to read. On organizational letterhead, your news release templates, and it should include at the top your contact information, your PIO contact information. Who can I call to get more answers if I have questions after reading this news release? What's the date or time? Do you number your news releases? At least having a date and time, I think, is really important. If you number your news releases, that would be okay too. But sometimes numbers go out; they may go out of order. If a news release gets hung up in your approval process, news release might go out before news release number 4, might go out before news release number 3, and then the media are saying, "Hey, we didn't get number 3. Where's number 3?" So you get a bunch of phone calls or questions because number 3 was just still stuck in the approval process. So maybe I would definitely include a date and time, and a news release number is optional. Title or headline, like I say, it's got to be catchy. This earthquake is prompting the activation of the EOC, or boil order water in effect. Something that's going to catch their attention. It gives a little bit of the information there. Then the body of the email, and then at the bottom, if it does go over a single page, you want to say more at the bottom of the first page so they know they need to keep reading or keep looking or find the rest of the story before they just put it away. And then at the end, you include end or the 3 hashtags or -30-. And those used to indicate in the old teletype days when the end of that story occurred. That was just kind of that showed that ticker tape or whatever they used to just send information out. That just indicated that was the end of that story.
Hey, Wade.
Yes.
Doug, in the chat, Doug Bitton asked a question. He asked, on the press releases, where should you reference your social media hashtags and other identifiers?
Okay. On a news release, I would include those at the bottom. And that's probably less important information, but it's important to include it. I would definitely put it there. And if I took some time, maybe we'll go back and look at the DEM news release that I had up a minute ago and see if we can find those on that news release. But those would go down in the footer. Yeah, good question. Thank you. And we can go back and check that DEM news release and see. So my Twilla County news releases were probably before social media days, to tell you the truth. I'm dating myself a little bit there. Okay, so but the bottom line here is communicate. When you have information, knowledge, it's power. If you want to get your audience to act, again, what's my objective here? If I want to get the audience to act, I've got to communicate that action to them, and I've got to emphasize the importance of it and the why to get them to act. So as soon as you know your objectives, your audience, your key messages and talking points, and they're approved and releasable, you want to get that out there. Communicate that as soon as it's available and to the public. That's going to be potentially life-saving, property-protecting information. So yeah, in a crisis, you want to get the right information to the right people at the right time. That's more important than worrying about maybe spelling and punctuation and grammar. You want to have it as professional as you can. And that probably, but your approval process isn't going to be wordsmithing. Your approval process isn't wordsmithing per se, but it doesn't have the right information for the right people at the right time. Again, as I said, easy to, now create these simply with templates. And templates are, again, just a document that's got some basic information in there that all you have to do is fill in the blanks. And that speeds up your process. That makes that news release available for approval much more quickly and for dissemination much more quickly than if you have to write it from scratch. And easy to use systems to get these news releases approved and out the door and to evaluate your efforts. But basically, are you handing a printed copy? We'll talk about approvals in a minute, but are you handing a printed copy off to the incident commander or the emergency manager to get their initials on it? Or are you emailing it? Or what processes are you using? You want to make them as simple and quick as possible to make sure nothing is getting bogged down or bottlenecked or someplace before it goes out to the public. All right, so here's the action. I can't see everybody, but Jeff, maybe you can help me out here. So we're gonna do a little activity here, write a news release. Grab a piece of paper off your desk and a pen, or if you want to open up another screen, just open up a blank Word document, or if you already have news release templates in your computer, pull up a news release template, and let's write a quick news release. Now, the news releases I've talked about, they're paragraph form. News releases could also be in bulleted form. A bulleted form would be a paragraph at the top that kind of briefly explains what this is about. And then you can have all the other who, what, why, where, when, how in bulleted form, if you choose to do that. Preference is the paragraph form where you've got things written out. That's usually the preference. But especially if it's really time sensitive, a bulleted format would be okay as well. But pull out a piece of paper or your template or a blank Word document, and we're gonna write a news release about water source contamination. So your source of drinking water for your community was just contaminated by a fuel leak, a vehicle accident, a tanker rollover, fuel leak, and now what are we gonna do? What information do we need to get out to the public? What's our objective, the action item you want them to take? Who's that audience going to be? And what are our key messages and talking points? Remember the inverted pyramid style, most important stuff at the top, least important at the bottom. And the who, what, why, where, when, how. You want to answer all those questions in your news release. So let's take, Jeff, I don't know if you've got a clock handy. Let's take 5 minutes. Is that too long? Maybe just let's take a couple minutes, indicate when you're finished, if you will, and then we'll just go ahead and begin, or continue, I should say. We'll go ahead and continue at that point. So
I'll let you know when 5 minutes is up or getting close.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So here's the scenario, if you will, a water source contamination by leaking fuel system. It could be a tanker, it could be a pipeline, whatever you want it to be. Water source contamination, leaking fuel system. So let me go back a couple slides then to the inverted pyramid, or if you wanted to put this stuff at the top too, just briefly, quickly pencil this in or write this in, your the header information. You know, what's the organization, Box Elder County Emergency Management, contact information, date and time, and then throw in your title and your body. So you can put this at the top right here. This will be your header information. And then remember, when you're finished, you want to do end or the hashtags or the 30. Hashtags or end are more common than the 30 these days. So there's the header. We'll go back to the inverted pyramid right there. I think that's, yeah, right there. So I'll keep that up while you're writing that. If you want to glance up at the inverted pyramid, most important facts, supporting facts, less important facts, and background information. If you have any questions while you're doing this, feel free to bring up your mic and let me know. Or if you're having difficulty with that one, and if you want to create your own scenario, pick another scenario that maybe would apply more to your organization. And those of you that have your cameras off, and if you don't want to do this, you can take this opportunity to go to the bathroom if you need to, and then come back. We won't even know.
Okay, I'll be back.
Pardon me?
I said I'll be back.
Yeah.
You've got like 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. 2 minutes, everyone. And a news release doesn't need to be long. If you've got all that information covered in a few sentences or so, you know, you saw a couple of the templates that I showed earlier. They weren't long news releases. They don't have to be lengthy as long as you cover that information.
Hey, while they're finishing up, I have a question.
Okay.
What happens if we sent out a news release with incorrect information?
Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about that coming up too. But yeah, so if you send out a news release with incorrect information and you know it, then, and this wasn't something that was caught by the media or misinformation by the media, then you want to correct that as soon as you can. Versus, well, this is what we'll talk about. We'll talk about more if you need to correct the media that made a mistake. That's different. But if we made this misinformation ourselves, I would do an updated news release, or you could call it even corrected or updated news release up at the top, where in your header information or even part of the title, corrected boil water order. You could put that right in the headline. And then you'd want to make sure you included the corrected information in that news release and emphasize this is the correct information. There's, you know, you maybe don't want to repeat the misinformation. You want to maybe leave the misinformation out, but just emphasize that this is the correct information right here, and send that out again as soon as possible. Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, Jeff. And I was thinking that we would talk about that, but that's actually, we're going to talk about what to do when the media makes a mistake coming up.
Hey, your 5 minutes is up.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll come back to that. We'll come back to your writing in just a minute. I'm going to finish up here. We'll go back to bottom line, communicate. All right, write a news release where we left off. So let's talk about the approval process really quickly now. So you just wrote a news release, or your PIO just wrote a news release. How do we get it approved? And this is going to be different for every one of your organizations. This is something you have to decide in advance. And in a blue sky days, that approval processes can be, you know, not as urgent as in emergency gray sky days. In the incident response, you're going to want a really quick approval process, because that information, as I said, could be life-saving or property protecting information that needs to get out there quickly. So have this arranged and identified and outlined in advance. So once the PIO writes the news release, who needs to approve it? Is that the emergency manager? Is that the incident commander? Do you have a joint system where you've got maybe other agencies that need to take a quick glance at it too? Who are all those people that need to sign off on it? How are you going to get it to them quickly? Is it through an email process, or you have to email this to people, or is it going to be hand delivered? Like I said, you're going to print it off and hand deliver it and get everybody's initials on it so you have a record. So what is that record process that this was actually reviewed and approved? You want a record of that. So you've documented it, and yes, everything this was approved and went out. At the time, it was accurate information. And that's kind of really what you're actually against as well, as at the time. Because we know things change in an incident, things progress, things get better, things get worse. But at this time it was approved, it was accurate, okay? It ensures that information is up to date and complete. And as I said, you want to document that process somehow. Initials, you keep that copy that had all the initials on it, and then you send out a clean copy to the media. You have a tracking sheet. You can have a tracking sheet that lists out all of your news releases, and then you check them off when they were approved by each of the different people that are on your approval process. Incident command, emergency manager, other agencies. So you have a checkbox for each one of those or something like that. So there's different ways of doing it. You want to make sure, as I said, that it isn't a bottleneck in slowing down that dissemination of information. How do you finally want this approved, disseminate it? Again, your target media. You create, if you have email, if you're sending this out in email, you create these email lists in advance. If it's just a TV, you can break it down by groups, just by TV news, radio news, all broadcast news, print news, all traditional news media, or you can break it down by city, county. I just want this to go to all the media outlets in my county, so you can create your email lists and make sure you've got the assignment desk, or if you've got reporters that cover that specific beat, or news directors, or whoever you want to include, you've got all those email addresses in there. Keep it maintained and up to date. So that's the basic dissemination processes through email. But your other to the media, I should say, to the media. Other dissemination options, you can bypass the media and go straight to the public, and we recommend this as well. Post your news releases on your public website. So if the media get it wrong, if the media is twisting it, if the media didn't even use it, you still send it out to the public through your website, or you post it out there on your Facebook page or in your Twitter account. So you have other ways of disseminating your news releases. High tech, low tech, backup systems. Power outages, the major disaster. You have runners that are taking your printed news releases and hanging them up on bulletin boards at city schools and city centers and things like that. So when the technology is gone, the power is out, the media is not functioning, you have other ways of getting this information out to your public. Okay, and then update that information as it needs to be updated. As I said, things change. Tracking it, what's coming in, what's going out. You want to keep track of all that information. How do we do this? WebEOC is a great tool for doing this. WebEOC, or if you have other status boards, if you have other tracking logs, whatever you use, you want to track what's going in, going out, and track what's coming in. So this information coming in is the information coming in. What am I using to write my news releases from? Where am I getting that approved, accurate, timely information? On my status boards. And then what's going out, keeping track of the news releases by date and time or number, if you're going to number them, as I mentioned. Hang all these up on the wall, right in the EOC, right in the Joint Information Center. Post them where everybody can see them. You want these to be seen as well. And if you're providing briefings and interviews, keep track of those. That's a whole nother training. We'll get into that another time. So you want to monitor the media after a news release. Are they covering it? Did they put it in their newscast? Did they cut into regular broadcasting for this breaking news information? Did they present that information accurately? Did they get it wrong? Did they add their own twist to it? So you kind of measure those things out, fair and balanced, effective or not. Does it have errors? Okay. Just skip ahead really quick. Addressing inaccuracies in the media. So this isn't the question that Jeff asked. This is if we made the mistake, we'll want to correct that. But if the media makes a mistake, you want to kind of weigh it out. how bad was the mistake? Was it life-threatening, or was it just they spelled a street wrong? They spell a street wrong in the newspaper, or did they get the entire address wrong, or something like that? Then you'll want to judge on how important it is to correct that information. Be calm. Try not to be accusatory and angry about it. Just ask them politely and say, "Can you quickly correct this information? It's wrong, and it's giving the public the wrong action to take." So monitoring that, do you have if you have a small staff, let me throw this out here. This is something that really is a afterthought, something that's like, I don't have enough people to do this. You can reach out to the Utah Public Information Officers Association and say, hey, we need help with media monitoring. Somebody that's in an unaffected area or their agency is not activated. They've got a PIO that they've got nothing to do but sit and watch the news. Hey, while you're watching the news, can you monitor our stories and report back whether they're positive or negative, whether they're accurate or inaccurate, or things like that, or they're outdated. So it's important that maybe you include these people on your email news release list so they have the correct information, but they can monitor the media for you. And then they'll report back to you, and you decide if you needed to correct something or if you needed new information or whatever the case may be. So that's why you monitor the media to see if our messages are being effective and if they need to be updated. Okay, that was it on the slides. But so let's go back to, here's the DEM one. And down in the bottom, the footer is our contact information, mailing address, and looks like we don't have our social media on there. Was one of the questions, I think. But so yeah, I would put it down here. It looks like that's something we might need to add. All right, I'm going to stop sharing, Jeff, and turn it back to you, and we'll see if there's any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Wade? I've got one more, as you were talking about this. As you were talking about the approval process, how critical is that approval process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's critical in many ways. Okay, first of all, it's got to be accurate information. So the approval is checking for accuracy, because we want the public to get the right information and to be able to be taking the right actions. So that's part of that approval process, making sure that we're reaching our objective through that information dissemination. It's also critical as far as covering our bases internally. Maybe the public information officer used the information that he had, but he wants to get it approved so that if something was incorrect when in the media, the media got it wrong, or even the information that the PIO was given was wrong, but it was approved before it went out. That kind of CYA, cover our bases basically. So, and then that documentation. If you don't document it, it doesn't happen. We all know that's part of emergency management. So that approval process is a documented process as well. So it's critical, critical in several ways.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for answering. Any other questions?
Let me just kind of throw this out here too. Another quick plug for the Public Information Officer Association I mentioned a moment ago. I said several of you had your hands up that you have a public information officer or someone in communications. If you want them to be involved with the Public Information Officer Association, I can put that link in the chat window here. But they can sign up for free, and it's it's utahpio.org. utahpio.org, and I'll put that in the. Hold on a second. Anyway, yeah, utahpio.org, and they can sign up for free. It gets them on our mailing list. It adds them, they get excellent training. They get informed about the quarterly meetings, the annual conference. It is a networking opportunity, so they can, if they need help in an emergency, they have a lot of other PIOs they can call for help. So I'd encourage that. just a quick plug too, if I'm asked again in the future, some of these other I Wonder topics that we'll be doing for public information officers include news interviews and handling media at the scene. So at some time in the future, we may be talking about news interviews and handling media at the scene. But I would certainly encourage you to have your PIOs go do that FEMA training that we talked about at the beginning. Go get that FEMA training. When we might offer the in-person basic PIO course. We've been getting a lot of questions about that. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer yet. We're still we're slowly transitioning into in-person stuff again. So it might be sooner than later, but I don't have any dates at this point as far as when we might offer the basic PIO course. As I mentioned at the beginning too, it's actually been replaced by that L105, which is a FEMA offered course, and we're going to have FEMA come to Utah and offer that course.
Hey,
Oh, go
Wade,
ahead, Chris. Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were there. Sorry.
I'm here. Sorry. Hey, this is Chris Rapp, and I was just going to let everybody know the states do have the ability to still offer the G290 and 291 because the certificates are issued at a state level, but they have the intention that 105 will replace the 290 and 291 as far as curriculum updates. So after we get the 105 brought out and our lovely instructors, Wade Mathews and hopefully Joe Doherty and some of our other PIO instructors take the course, then we'll be able to offer that course in person. DEM is going to start resuming in-person classes in July. But like Wade said, it's going to take us a little bit to get this 105 off the ground. So hang in there. We're trying really hard to get back to in-person stuff.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, well, with that, thank you, Wade, for your presentation today. As a reminder, this webinar and all other webinars in this series will be available on the DEM website at dem.utah.gov/exercises or now at dem.utah.gov/iwonder. Our webinar next week will be I Wonder How to Request Air Assets from the State EOC, and this will be presented by Sheila Curtis. If you have any I Wonder topic suggestions, please reach out to tbodley@utah.gov to have your topic added to our calendar. We're always excited to help you explore and get to know all that DEM can offer the emergency management community. Until next time, keep wondering.